The name means fragrant harbour, and Hong Kong is the ultimate metropolis. It's after 10 p.m. on a Sunday night, a time when most of us are dozing, yet the streets of Hong Kong Island are teeming with people heading for the shops that show no sign of closing. Shopping ranges from local markets with traditional delicacies, tiny cramped streets full of market stalls, to the ultimate high fashion with all the big names in subterranean centres and malls hidden within the high-rise buildings, and often connected by mile-long moving walkways. Now across the harbour on the world-famous Star Ferry to the mainland area of Kowloon, with its narrow streets, which during the day sees a never-ending flow of traffic, but which metamorphosises into a huge open-air dining area after 6 p.m. By now it's way after midnight, but I, along with thousands of others, am wrapped up in the heady atmosphere that is Temple Street. Walk from stall to stall, choosing each tempting dish. Be it 1,000-year-old eggs? Well, actually, they're only about 3 weeks past their sell-by date. But how about braised tortoise or snake soup? Sorry, but I much prefer Szechuan beef. However, once fully satisfied, it's time to walk back through the narrowly packed market stalls and main roads. Glaring neon signs in English and Cantonese leap out at you. Some very strange product names indeed. I wonder how they make perfume from tyres. If you can't handle crowds, then perhaps Hong Kong might not be for you. Then it's to find the nearest station on the superb mass transit system, as it twists and turns underground back to Hong Kong Island, and the short rest in the hotel. It is only a short rest, because the city is full of tempting sights and never seems to sleep. As I look out of my City Garden Hotel bedroom window, near the top of one of the many high-rise buildings, I see Hong Kong's answer to health and safety. The workforce moving around like agile monkeys on what passes to be their equivalent to scaffolding. That's bamboo tied together with string, and not a safety harness in sight. Right outside the hotel is a tram stop, and now it's time to experience the best value for money ride that I've ever come across. Riding along the length of Victoria Harbour and through the city on the top deck of a traditional 1930s Hong Kong tram. Through the city centre to the docks and back again. And all life unfolds before your very eyes. The best place to find peace and quiet in Hong Kong is to take the cheap peak tram ride to the summit of Victoria Peak, which stands head and shoulders above the highest skyscraper. The view over Hong Kong is simply stunning. Well, that is if it isn't obscured by clouds. A harbour with a rich maritime heritage. Once a base for notorious pirates. A port of call for the magnificent tea clippers en route to and from London. A colonial staging post and a once naval defence base. Across the harbour to Kowloon, where we were last night, home to 95% of the Chinese population. And to the north, the misty mountains of the New Territories. I spent a day there up near the Chinese border, and it seemed as if the world had stood still. Small villages. fish farms, and farming folk working their fields in the traditional way. And very reminiscent of where I live, cockle picking. From the Causeway Bay area, it is but a short, sometimes hair-raising bus ride, especially if you're on the top deck, to the typhoon shelter that is Aberdeen Harbour. For sheer tranquility and enjoyment, hire a sampan and cruise around the harbour. It really is an eye-opener. From floating restaurants, fishing fleets, traditional boat building and repair yards, and expensive yachts, to large sea-going sampans in which families live permanently as they trawl the South China Sea. For some, the large sampans never leave the harbour, as they have become permanent low-cost homes for poorer families, with sometimes several families for each boat. But it's when we finish our tour and return to the quay, and that's when it's vividly brought home to me that this is a working harbour, especially for fish. Local families, restaurants and shops barter for the daily catches, and sometimes using very traditional methods indeed. Before I end this short film, I must show Stanley, the region where most of the British colonials and expat financiers built their homes away from the dynamism of the big city. Here are tranquil streets and a traditional market. A small town with its own beach and looking out over the South China Sea. Night has fallen yet again and time to return to Victoria Harbour. There is no greater sight than travelling across to the Kowloon side and from the harbour front walkway looking back to the island. Skyscrapers that change colour. The myriad lights in all shapes and patterns. The harbour traffic never stopping. And the cruise liners leaving to give their passengers one of the highlights of their trip. However, for veteran travellers like myself, forget the luxury of the large ships and enjoy the low-cost simplicity of the world-famous 100-year-old star ferries as they plod relentlessly across the harbour. On my early trips to Hong Kong, the main airport was an ex-RAF station called Kai Tak, with the jets having to weave left and right below the skyscrapers as they performed their final approach. And it wasn't unknown for one to overshoot the too small runway. Now the runway is an international cruise terminal to complement the existing ocean terminal. I remember being here on the day that the new airport opened and they transferred all the goods traffic and equipment overnight. The only trouble was that the following week they had to take it all back to Kai Tak because their goods handling system didn't work. Still, now the passengers can happily use the Sir Norman Foster designed masterpiece as they leave this ultimate metropolis that is Hong Kong.